Hello to everybody watching and listening. Once again, welcome back to Mechabellum, and welcome to something that I think I have never actually really done. Whether or not you can believe it at this point, starting with Supply Specialist, Crawler, Fang, and Stormcaller, into a Quick Supply Specialist with Arclight and Stormcaller, and we will see what he adds on. You know, one of the classic unit compositions that is basically aggro only. Okay, the opponent drops wasps. You know about Steel Ball Mustang? I'm gonna play it this time. Not at the start. I don't have either Steel Balls or Mustangs right now. I try to avoid them whenever I can, honestly. But it will happen, believe me. So, what's my opponent still doing? Nothing much. He didn't even add on any additional Arclight. He used his Quick Supply Specialist to get some early wasps out. I don't have any fangs dropped, so these wasps are only just going to win this entire first round, no matter what happens. Best I can really hope for is killing all of the ground units that my opponent has and the towers. Which arguably is more value than what my opponent will be getting on the wasps, unless they turn into some really good carry wasps. Am I going to get all of the ground units? I am. But I'm not going to get the tower. The missiles don't do enough damage under the tower debuff. Tower degradation, as I call it. The wasps can level, missile strike comes out, extended range sledgehammers as well. My opponent is probably not going to pick mass-produced wasps, but there is subsidized stormcallers coming out. I do end up putting the missile strike here. I really like the missile strike. Put it a little closer so that the wasps are properly going in there. My opponent did pick subsidized stormcallers, so this is going to be a really good... like, he's going to have a lot of stormcallers. I have to prepare for a lot of missiles. I could have picked the same, but I think the missile here... I don't really want to go too far into stormcallers because it's kind of easy to counter them. Now, I said this before, I am not a fan of dropping Mustangs the moment you see wasps. Especially if you're planning on missing these wasps. So now I have Marksman on the board against, like this is sort of an investment into the future. I don't necessarily want to go into too much chaff for the moment. The Arclights are going to kill that and the Stormcallers as well. So going for a sort of all-around, somewhat decent-ish unit is a good call, I think. Middle Marksman kind of gets taken out quickly, but the Crawlers are on the Stormcallers. Storm-Offs on the side here. My opponent's Stormcallers are further apart from each other, so he might just win this Storm off. I think I have enough stuff, yeah. There's even more Crawlers here, which would have done a huge amount of work distracting. And HP is still looking fine. Not too much damage. Fortress comes out, also Mustangs come out. At level 3, they are actually pretty good if you give him range. Vulcan comes out as well, Sabertooth for money. I think everything here in theory is a viable option. We shall see what happens. So I go for the Mustangs and my opponent goes for two fortresses in round number 3. And probably some chaff or an Arclight. The Mustangs here, I'm pretty sure I range him. I do also level the Stormcallers here, and these are now ranged Mustangs. And then I do end up just using the rest of my supply. I didn't have a lot, on a lot more chaff. When my opponent has this many Stormcallers and is set to go for even more, I do want a decent amount of chaff out. So now the Stormcallers here are actually going for a hit that... Nah, it's not going to hit the fortress. Unfortunate. I guess it gave the fortress a bit of a love tap. The Mustangs are dealing with the wasps very nicely. And then they can start putting their DPS into units that actually matter a whole lot more, like these fortresses. There is still some chaff, so the fortress is not yet putting any rounds into the fortress. Some of the Stormcallers are targeting that, but honestly, the Mustangs have the DPS to just burn through the fortress. Now that is still half a fortress worth of health left. I do get a tower debuff, but the Mustangs are the first thing and thus the most vulnerable. Tower debuff ends up coming in. Fortress does fall. And this is once again shaping up to be a pretty close round with a storm off. All in all, my opponent gets 3 Stormcallers, but I get all 4. So it's just a plain 50 damage. Steel Ball production comes out. My opponent goes for it immediately. There's Elite Steel Balls out. There's Elite Rhinos out. I end up also going for a Steel Ball production. So what do I actually do? For the moment I just add more Stormcallers, which is kind of ironic. Now I have more Stormcallers than the guy with subsidized Stormcallers. And I don't have a giant to use my item on yet. The item, the Stormcallers, and a bit of leveling, I think, is all that I could really afford this time around. Now these steel balls are a bit annoying, but they shouldn't be all that much of a deal into this many Stormcallers and chaff. And my opponent does not have the best chaff clear. He does have some ranged Arclights. Honestly, from this point on, you might see me try and switch into carry Arclights, especially if they can get reliable hits on these Mustang. You can see the amount of level progress it gives to an Arclight here. It looks like I'm about to get completely overwhelmed here. The Stormcallers don't have enough stuff up front. The Steel Balls have been more of an issue than I expected, and I end up taking quite an amount of damage in this round. We have some Wraiths, we have Steel Balls. Once again, Steel Balls. Instead of 1 level 3 pack, I think it's now 2 level 2 packs, and I end up going for them. If the opponent is going for fortresses, if you remember that one fortress game where I had double senior manufacturing and still managed to lose, spoiler alert, you should look for the most painful game, quote unquote. Definitely, or the most painful name of the most painful title. What did I call it again? I'm kind of starting to get a little bit tired here. What was the name? I think it was like, this match actively hurts, for the match that I lost so badly. He's putting the Wasps where the Mustangs are not going to be for the entire duration of the match. I was smart enough not to go for the Wasps. I kind of expected my opponent to sell them for a long time now. Instead I go for the Stormcallers here, hoping to get a little bit of chaff, but I will be denied that. Negligible damage on the Fortress Shield. And there's a single marksman that I don't think is going to be able to deal with these. If the crawlers were holding position here, yes, this would probably work out, but not like that. So the Mustangs also level to level 4, which means they are actually pretty good here. Stormcallers mostly wasting their first salvos. Yeah, the Wasps are running after crawlers, but they are soon retargeting. And that also means they are baited towards the tower. Which means my opponent does get a tower debuff in time. Steel Balls still have enough DPS to push through the fortress shields and the opponent's Steel Balls. I get completely rolled on this side. Steel Balls now targeting fortresses. And I guess more Steel Balls. They are doing a decent amount of damage. All of my carry chaff clear here has been completely overwhelmed under the tower debuff. And it ends up being quite a steep loss again. I don't even get to kill this fortress here. And that fortress, well, I guess it doesn't matter all that much. I think it gets to level. Yeah, it does get to level. As it comes out, and that is just an instant pick for me, my opponent goes for Sledgehammer production. I still have Steel Ball production, and now is the time where I say, okay, it's melting point time. I guess Mustang Steel Ball Melter is kind of the name of the game here. My opponent is going for Fang production, but I did drop an additional pack of Mustangs in order to defend against these Wasps here. That should now hopefully work. But my opponent isn't even thinking about it. He's putting the Wasps back where they were, just on the other side. I do go for rapid resupply so that I can afford range on that melter, and I think the second upgrade here, yeah. I don't want to waste too much supply, I still have a lot of health to burn through.